to start off by kicking this off with Sunil. Oh, perfect. VP of Sales from AppsFlyer. Please join me in welcoming Sunil.
We're crazy. We are the industry standard in mobile attribution globally. So, our SDK and technology can be found on over 50,000 apps. Currently on over 5 billion active smartphones, which represents about 98% of all active devices globally. Tons of scale, tons of people, tons of great stuff going on. And I know that all of you guys after lunch would love nothing more than for me to spend the next 45 minutes giving you the pitch on why AppsFlyer is the best thing ever. But I'm not going to do that. I think there's actually a session later today where some of the contenders are going to be debating who's better. But for today, I thought, just given the fact that I've been to hundreds of conferences over the years, I think one thing that stands out to me in terms of good content is hearing from your peers. So as we were brainstorming, what did we want to talk about today? There's lots of interesting topics we could have covered. We thought, at the end of the day, what it netted out to was, what is the cool shit that our clients are doing with the data? And there's so much cool stuff going on. So that's really what we're going to talk about. Before we do that, I want to just quickly set the context of what attribution is. So mobile attribution is super, super critical as you think of your overall mobile marketing stack, and for a couple reasons. Number one is that it's the only piece of your stack, if you think about it, that's actually creating marketing data that you then will extend into any different core components of your stack. So whether that's acquisition partners or customer data platforms or A/B testing platforms or your omni-channel analytics systems. There's a lot of different ways that you can extend attribution data to really make it really, really useful. And then number two is, I think, just the fact that we sit in the middle and we have the opportunity to power all these other technologies. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. So one thing I want to say is I'm not going to be doing any more talking. We're very, very fortunate to have some of the best companies in the world as customers. And speaking of, what we decided to do today is invite 3 of our customers to come share what we consider lightning rounds. So quick case studies that are talking about some innovative strategies or tips and techniques that they're applying in their world and their business that we thought would be really interesting, leveraging attribution data as well as other data sets. So we've got 3 customers. We've got Andy from Kabam, Patrick from Postmates, and Simon from Hopper, who are all going to be joining us. And without further ado, I'm going to kick it off, and I'd like to invite Patrick from Postmates to come up to the stage. There you go.
Oh, thanks.
Yep.
All right, my name is Patrick. I'm the Director of User Acquisition at Postmates, and we're going to be talking about how to bring profitable user acquisition to the on-demand delivery space. If you don't know Postmates, it's a company that was founded in 2011 by 3 co-founders. We operate in 250 plus cities. We employ over 500 people in San Francisco, Nashville, and Bellevue. We have over 100,000 couriers and 250,000 plus partners. And we recently, in Q4, we recently announced our unlimited subscription fee, where it's $9.99 a month, no delivery fee on orders over $20. When I first joined Postmates in July, they historically were focused on user growth via new unique user, focused on a CPA model. As we all know from a games background, from which my prior employer was, it's not necessarily an efficient way to measure your long-term business growth. User retention is drastically different by market and channel of acquisition. Usually social networks are much higher. And you could be overpaying for a new unique user buying unprofitably. A CPA might be $50, but the LTV might be $40. When I first joined Postmates, it was very, very different. We were pivoting from CPA to return on ad spend, but the revenue that was being attributed was not accounting for one essential thing, which is your cost of goods sold. So for gaming, you measure return on ad spend by subtracting your 30% platform cost from the revenue from the ad source over your media spend. This number never really changes. It's always 30%. But at Postmates, our cost of goods sold varies wildly. It varies by market, how much fleet we have on the ground in the specific market, and then weekend incentives. Like if you go out and do 100 jobs, we'll give you $100. That eats into our cost of goods sold. So essentially what we did is we pivoted to this new, what I would call Postmates profit on ad spend to ensure that we're buying profitably. Now, what did this necessarily do for us? Is that we shifted more advertising money into growing our fleet where we're undersupplied, When you're undersupplied, that means you have more demand than couriers on the ground, which then you have to incentivize your couriers more to actually complete more jobs. We could then identify specific markets, double down, and grow specific markets profitably, where your payback period is a lot shorter. We were then also identifying fraudulent traffic when vendors were supplying us new users that weren't making repeat purchases. And essentially from August to January, we were able to grow our profit on ad spend day 7 about 450%, which is great for us. Next we have, I think, Andy? Oh, question, sorry, forgot.
Yeah. So we're going to open it up just for like 1 or 2 questions if anyone has right now. Otherwise, we can move on, and we'll save some time at the end as well.
Hi, Patrick. Quick question.
I like your hair.
Thank you. Thank you. So the cost of goods sold, I'm just curious, for everybody, who's in different verticals, who doesn't maybe deal with this, like what's the variance of like, your most profitable kind of sale to like the least profitable? Like, is it a huge delta? Are we talking about like between 10% and 40%, or what do you think?
I can't necessarily comment on that specific number.
Okay.
I don't think Basham would be too happy on me, but it does vary wildly different. It varies a lot based on market. It also increases the distance that the courier travels, also by the order size as well.
This is a more general question. I'm hoping maybe we can answer that later, but I'm interested to know what methodology you use to actually measure ROI on a marketing campaign. Do you have like a attribution model? Do you run A/B test? How do you know for sure that this is the return on that particular campaign?
I mean, essentially, when a user signs up, that's a specific identifier was by their email address, so it's on a per user level that's attributed to a campaign. So like we have a special like naming taxonomy that says this user signed up with this email address, came from this specific traffic source. So that's how we know.
Last touch.
Yeah. Cool. And you're next, right? I think. Or yep. All right. There you go.
Hey guys, my name is Andy. I come from Kabam. I'm the director of UA. I want to talk a little bit more about our flagship title, Marvel Contest of Champions, and kind of how we look at our geographical expansion plans over the last 3 years. All right, so some quick stats. We launched this game in December 2014. It's considered old to many, but it's still going strong. We've released over 122 champions. We support 17 languages. We're live in every territory in the world except for Android China, which is to come soon, hopefully. We have had 1 billion hours played and over 39 billion fights from our players. So as we talk about kind of geographical expansion, everyone always talks about, what is the next big hot market? And aside from the US, I'm pretty sure we all know, Asia is a very big driver for growth, particularly China. So I want to share with you kind of these screenshots that we have on the App Store between this latest Black Panther update that we just had. So on the top is basically what we show to our Western App Store users, whereas on the bottom is on the mainland China iOS App Store. So it's pretty easy to kind of see the difference. We are playing off of kind of some cultural themes with Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year on the bottom with the red motifs, the gold colorway. Things are a little bit busier in Asia when it comes to creatives, and I don't want to make this a creative talk or anything like that, but it's considered okay to be a little bit busier with your creatives out in China and in the Asian nations. So we did have this. So if you look over there, the base assets are basically the same, but we spruced them up a little bit more. So let's move on. So kind of how we look at the checklist when we expand to different markets. The top, I guess, 3, 4 bullet points you guys will already know. Those are kind of no-brainers. But I want to cut into a little bit more on the partnering. And does the return on ad spend justify continued investment? So partnering with the relevant networks. So as we look at China, obviously we can't use Facebook. It's not going to be a driver for growth for us. So we got to look elsewhere. So one of our initiatives is to advertise more on Tencent social ads, also known as Guangdong. And AppsFlyer has that integration with those folks. So we're really excited to kick off our own managed campaigns in China. And finally, another example, kind of Russia's been another big growth driver for us too, but it's the same problem. Facebook isn't a huge social network out there. In fact, it's VK, or One Contact Day, if I said that correctly. So we've been pushing out some more of our marketing campaigns through VK. So what I want to stress is that you want to find the right mix, the right channels, and the right partners to get you the desired effects. Anyone that's selling you, Russian traffic, you always ask yourself, where is it coming from? And finally, does the return on ad spend justify continued investment? So for instance, within D1, D7, D14, you should have a pretty good idea of how your users are monetizing relative to how much the media is costing you. So, you do your internal work to see, is this going to be profitable in the long run? But what I also want to stress is, there's a lot of other external costs that go into making this profitable for us. For instance, customer support. We just localized the game in Arabic. But if we're not getting that many support tickets in Arabic, does that mean we should support that language going forward? We also have it in Norwegian. I think the population of Norway is like 20 million. It's not that big. But the case for Norway was that it's a very, very developed economy with lots of high-paying users. And some other checklists that I think about kind of in the scope of Marvel is, overall market size and barriers to entry. Market size being language being a huge driver. And finally, general network infrastructure device makeup. This game, Marvel, it requires a little bit of a solid device. You can't really have those janky, 8 gigabyte devices playing this game. So that's a huge consideration for us, because if our players aren't having fun on these lower tier devices, we're not catering to their needs to the fullest. So kind of looking at all these put together, we look at whether or not we can continue our investment in these new territories like Russia and China and so on and so forth. So, thank you.
Questions?
Doc from Moloco. Hey, Andy. Do you localize the games everywhere, or is it just the creatives?
The game is localized as well. So we have it live in 17 different languages, but kind of going back to the costs associated with this, we localize our assets too. So if the game is localized, we'll do our best to we will localize the assets so that we get, a full kind of marketing picture, or we have alignment with our marketing initiatives when we market in these regions.
Questions?
Hey,
guys?
Patrick.
Do you localize your creatives in-house, or do you outsource it?
Yes, I would say, 99% is in-house. There are some special territories like Japan, China. Could be a use case where it could help to get an agency to help us out. But because we're bound by IP, it gets into a little bit of red tape over there. Yes, Simon.
Can you tell us how you work with foreign governments? We're chatting about China.
Sure. So as of last year, getting into China was a little bit easier on iOS, just because Apple kind of circumvents a lot of the Chinese government regulations. But they are really cracking down. They're not cracking down, but they're making it a lot harder for foreign companies to enter China. So as we go into Android China, some of the considerations are, do you have a local entity that's really going to not sponsor you, but take ownership of your presence in China? So, and also advertising on Tencent and Weibo, you need to have government approval as well in certain ways. So it's not as easy as signing an IO over here. Yes?
Same question as your colleague. What marketing attribution model do you use? Last touch, multi-touch?
Last touch. Mm-hmm.
Of your spend in China, what would you say is the percentage that you're spending with agencies or companies based in China versus outside of China?
Let's see. We have an ad network partner that we spend pretty okay with, but a lot of the spend is managed in-house. So we really aren't using that many agencies. Yes?
Do you do view-through?
Excuse me?
Do you do view-through?
View-through? Yes, for video.
1 day, 1 hour?
24 hours? 24 hours is the standard, but there are use cases if we'll cram down if we know if a particular network is not behaving nicely. Okay, so without further ado, I will introduce to you guys Simon from Hopper.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yeah, cool. Thanks for coming out. Thanks, AppsFlyer, for having me. My name is Simon. I'm the head of user acquisition at Hopper.
So who in the room has used Hopper? Nice, nice. And who has booked with Hopper? Yeah, we need to work on that one. So for those who don't know, let me do like a quick recap of what Hopper is. So Hopper is a flights booking app that predicts the future price of flights. So essentially, we crunch somewhere between 10 to 15 billion flights prices every day, and we've built this massive archive of data that our data scientists are trying to figure out and have built an algorithm that will predict the future prices of flight. So how it works, you download the app, you search for a flight, and we'll tell you if you should book now or if you should wait for a better price. And ideally, we will tell you should wait because that's when you are exposed to Hopper value. So you can actually watch your flight, and that means that you subscribe to push notifications, and when the price reaches its lowest predicted point, we'll send you that notification, and you can score that amazing deal. We're a mobile-only company, so it's app-only. We don't have a website, so we don't do a lot of like Google AdWords, like a lot of the travel industry, which is what also makes our user acquisition unique. And we're getting a pretty good scale right now. We're selling over $1.5 million in flights every day in the app. And in terms of growth pace, we get about 1 million installs per month, which is, if you're a gaming company, doesn't look big, but we're still topping those travel app store rankings almost every month. So Hopper is really more a conversation. And we have those users who plan really early. They plan 4 to 5 months in advance. And like that much time in advance, they tell us where they want to go and when, and that information is very valuable. And so notifications is really everything. We sell over 90% of our flights through a push notification instead of like browsing the app. And so what was kind of interesting learning from those notifications is that if we wait until the flight drops to send the first notification and you don't hear about Hopper for like 2-3 months, most users will think the app doesn't work. They're like, we get reviews, the app doesn't work, haven't received any message. So now we make sure that we keep that conversation going. So we send about 1 notification a week and be like, hey, the price just went up, don't panic, it's gonna go down again. So we establish that kind of trust until the big day comes up and the price went down, you should book now, and people get really, really excited. So in terms of scale, we're now the #1 flights app in North America. And so I think November, December, January, we had more installs in North America than Booking.com and Expedia. So like that doesn't make any sense. These guys spend $3.7 billion a year in marketing in Google AdWords. They outspend our entire annual marketing budget every 6 hours. And yet we have more app installs than them, and we are selling more flights on mobile than they are. So when you think about a world where everything is shifting towards app, and travel has been in digital for so long that they're kind of stuck in that web play where they buy a lot of from Google, a lot of traffic from Google. They try to A/B test like crazy their website, so they're kind of stuck in that space. And we are actually owning the mobile for flights. And something really cool that we do, because we have these super smart data scientists, they predict flights, but they're also able to predict where and when you actually want to travel. So we sold over 100 million of flights that people never asked for. So if you're watching a flight to Italy for 2 weeks in the summer, actually you can kind of figure out that's, you're flexible on that. It's probably your vacation, your summer vacation. So we're actually watching the dates, a few days earlier, a few days later, and we can also figure out what destinations are similar. So if you're watching Rome, we can actually realize that maybe you're just interested in a Europe trip, so we will send you a notification about a great price to Barcelona. And we're able to do that because people will set different watches. So they will set a watch to Rome and to Barcelona. So our system is kind of able to create a relationship between those cities. So that's our Hopper AI. I have to say it. And interesting business development. We started to sell hotels in New York because if you're in travel, the bread and butter of the travel industry is accommodation. That's where you make actual money because the commissions are much higher. And we decided to go also the Hopper way. Like, you don't want a list of 300 hotels with, that kind of Christmas tree that Booking.com is that says, hey, 3 people are watching this, 2 people just booked, you have to book now. So we went with a different approach, and we actually visited 100 of these hotels to shoot the content in a kind of an Instagram story way, because that's all the rage. We had to have those stories as well. So now we're going to sell hotels, and that's going to be really cool to see how it's going to work in the next few months. So that was a pretty long Hopper introduction, I'm sorry. AppsFlyer asked me to do a quick, to think about something cool and something maybe different than attribution that we were doing with their data, because a lot of these softwares have helped you with attribution, but they have a ton of extra features. And we are a very small team, we're just 3 people, and we have a lot of channels to manage and a lot of experiments to run. So we're trying to get the most out of the tools that we use. So we had a lot of vendors, so the Facebook reps were like, hey, most of the travel brands actually spend over 50% of their budget on remarketing. What are you guys doing? We were only doing 100% user acquisition, focused on growth. So we were like, okay, let's try to figure out a smart way to do remarketing, because it's kind of tricky for Hopper. We tell most of our users, don't book now. So I don't want you to download the app and I tell you, don't book that flight, wait, and then you fire up Facebook a minute later and it will tell you, come back to the app, book the flight, like those Amazon products that's following you all around, and people hate that. So let's try to be a little smarter. How could we do remarketing differently? And then we realized that actually our push notifications are already some kind of remarketing, right? The users tell us where they want to go, so what they want to buy, and when there is an interesting new development with the price, we're actually remarketing. And it's super efficient, people lose their mind, they literally lose their mind, they go crazy. Seriously, they lose their basic cognitive capacities. They see the price drop and they just jump on it. Something happening in their brain when you get those price drop notifications. But obviously we're not converting 100% of these users. So we're like, what's special about these notifications? It's not the fact that they're push notifications. We don't really, no one cares. That's kind of the vehicle. So what if we could take that information that a price dropped and that you should buy right now and encapsulate it into another vehicle and serve it to you a second or third time, right? And so we were like, okay, in an ideal world, we would just use Facebook as a notification vehicle. Maybe you missed the notification, you had to talk about it with your friends about the trip, so you haven't acted on it yet. So maybe we're going to show you a second message on Facebook. So when you work in user acquisition marketing, you have to have those big ideas, those kind of projects that seem impossible. You don't even know where to start. So we're like, this is where we want to get, but how could we actually do that? How can we plug Facebook into our notifications? That doesn't exist. And then we realized that actually AppsFlyer that we were already working with for attribution have a lot of different features that could get us there. So, and we have a really good relationship with them. I've been working with them for a year now, and I really love that tool. It's not because they sponsored the session. I think they're the best. And this is, so they have an event tracking option. So if you use any attribution platform, you should probably track your events with the platform too, so that you don't track, you not only track your CPI in the platform, but you also see what users are more, which users are more engaged, etc. Right? So once you have those events set, well, then it's pretty easy to create audiences, buckets of users based on their behavior. So that's their feature that's called audiences, right? So you can see here, I'm building this audience of people who downloaded Hopper on iOS in the last 90 days. They've set up a watch to New York City. They received a notification in the last 24 hours, and they did not book, right? So I have this fresh pool of users that I know should be going crazy about this price and haven't booked yet. And so this audience is refreshed, I don't know the specifics, every couple hours. And it's also sent to Facebook. So AppsFlyer will take the mobile IDs of these users and just create for you an audience on a bunch of networks. And these 3 are the ones we work with: Facebook, Snapchat, ironSource. So now I have these users, these audiences there that I can start targeting. And another feature that they have is deep linking. So if we're retargeting you, you already have the app. And ideally, we don't want you to have to open and research your flight again. So we use our deep linking feature to actually bring the user directly to the flights that we think they should buy. And so we actually set it up, and these ads performed really well. It was like seriously the best campaign I've ever set up on Facebook. We had an amazing engagement, thousands of likes, of shares. And you know what I really like about Facebook ads that you don't get on Google is that you have some social proof, especially on remarketing. So if you think of like, why did these people not book with Hopper? And a lot of them probably don't trust the app. Like, with this bunny, you know, I'm going to book on the airline's website. Are they legit? I don't know. So, but by showing these people an ad and showing comments that are also liked by other users, like love Hopper, like I just booked my flight, it's a Christmas miracle. Thank you, Therese. So that creates that social proof, right? And but why do we get so great engagement? It's really interesting. It's because we are in their face on Facebook right when we showed our value to them in the app, right when the price dropped. So all these users that are seeing these ads, they already love us. It's just, you know, a big thing of love. It's amazing. And we have a great click-through rate, over 4% unique click-through rate. So I don't know what, like, depends on the industries, but usually on my user acquisition ads, I only get like up to 1% if it's a very custom ad, so like 4%. Amazing, super cheap, and people book. Like, they click on those ads, they land in the app, and they will book the flight. So I have the post-click conversions, I have a ton of view-through conversions as well, because they see the ad, maybe they're reminded, they go and just book later. So we're super happy about this. I bring it to the CEO. I think it almost went to the board. We're like, we nailed remarketing. We're so smart. We're geniuses. We're winning. And you know how you're biased as a marketer when you think you found something and then you just, you know, keep your eyes on it and you don't really, you know, doubt yourself or whatever. But as I told you, we're really data-driven, and the data scientist team, the data team, is constantly challenging us. You know, they're like the negative ones. They're like, but I mean, like, probably these users would have booked anyway, like, even if they clicked on your ad. So I'm like, okay, let's actually make like an actual test. And the actual cool thing you can do with your attribution data is not only remarketing and audiences, is you can run a lift analysis and see how much these campaigns actually contributed in incremental bookings. So that's what we did. And so we created two cohorts of 300,000 users. And on the test group, we showed all these amazingly the ads are performing so well on the test group. And on control group, we don't do anything. We're not going to remarket you. And then we look at bookings after a week, after a month, after 2 months. And what we see is that it didn't bring any actual incremental booking. So although the ads were performing so well and we were like ready to pour a lot of money into it, by having this data scientist team being very skeptical and having our setup with the attribution platform, we're able to prove that actually we were not getting it right, still not getting it right. So lift analysis, I think it's going to be a big trend too. Facebook rolled out a thing where now the lift analysis is available to every marketer. So I think it's going to be a big trend, which is kind of interesting because when you think about it, the advertisers that are running offline TV campaigns back in the days, that's the only thing they were using, lift analysis. And now we're like, no, we can track users like with the cookie, the clicks, whatever, but we're still going back to those lift analysis. And then to end up on a positive note, I think we can still nail it. Two things that we want to try is obviously we should segment the users that we remarket. So someone that booked already 6 times with Hopper probably doesn't need an ad to book a 7th time. But someone who has watched like 7 flights with Hopper and still has not booked, then that person maybe we should keep hammering a bit on Facebook. And then something we haven't really figured out on a technical level is how to bring the flight level data into the ad copy. So I could target you and say, hey, your Paris flight on this date just dropped to $654. It's going to go back up in less than 8 days. Book now. That might be a little creepy, but I think that if we bring that level of granularity, we can increase the click-through rate even more and make it a thing. So thank you.
Simon, so how are you actually putting together that retargeting ad? It looked like you just posted it on your Facebook wall or community page. Is that what it was? Because it didn't say ad or sponsor next to it at all.
It's a screenshot I took from like the Ads Manager platform, but these are just regular ads, and I target them towards the audiences that are generated by AppsFlyer. So it's like app re-engagement ad if you go on Facebook, and then that's what it is, right? Can I go back? Yeah, it's because it's from the interface, from your ads, Facebook ads interface. So it even says my name, and obviously it doesn't say my name when. I hope so. Yeah.
So given this, are you starting to use a lift analysis to analyze the ROI on other campaigns, and including user acquisition?
Yeah, like that was really eye-opening on how much something you think works or not is not always what you think it is. So we contacted Facebook to do a big lift analysis on our user acquisition campaigns, because something really interesting happened. I think we have a bit more time, so. But something really interesting happened in January for us. January is is very cheap to buy installs because a lot of the retailers spend all of their budget in December for Christmas. But for travel, it's actually a great month because that's when people start planning their, spring break, trips, whatever. So the conversion is really good. So for us, like great conversion, cheap installs, we decided to double our budget in January. We spent over $2 million in January on user acquisition. And so we have a healthy mix of 50-50 organic and paid installs, usually. So I'm like, if I'm doubling my spend, I'm probably gonna land into like a 60-40 or 66-33 ratio. But what happened is that, so the paid installs doubled, and even more than doubled, because we doubled the budget but bought them for cheaper. And the organic also doubled. So like, obviously you get some kickback, some word of mouth, maybe you reach some rankings, we got a little more PR than usual because the app circulates more, but obviously something was wrong. Like, you can't just double your organic because you double your paid. So what I realized is that these organics were not organics, they're just misattributed paid installs. And then I was trying to figure out how, and on Facebook there is a really useful setting that helps you compare the different attribution windows. So you can say, okay, show me the installs I got for 1 day, 7 days post-click, 1 day post-view. And then compare it to 30-day post-click, 7 days post-view. And that just doubled the amount of installs we were getting on Facebook. So I'm like, oh, I don't touch my default setting. I just use a 1 day post-view attribution. But then actually a lot of the organic installs are just people who saw the ads a bunch of times, heard it about on the, via a friend, and then ended up downloading them. So what we want to do now is run a lift analysis on our user acquisition campaign to see what's the true baseline of organic that we get. And then what we want to do is extend our view through windows from 1 day to 7 days. So the CPI is going to go lower, but it's going to be the same for everyone. And I think it's not dangerous as long as you understand what you're doing. And it will actually help you figure out which channels have higher view-through conversions. So, and I think it will help Facebook against Google, for example. Because Google, you have like these text ads, not super sexy, and Facebook, you have these video ads or Instagram stories ads that take up all the screens. So I think by extending our attribution window, view-through, that will help those channels' performance.